Well, good morning, everybody. My name's Jim. I'm one of the pastors here, and I don't want to trip over this because I'm old and I would break if I fall. So it's good to be here this morning. Hey, if you're a first-time guest here, special welcome to you. If you are a first-time guest, in the pew in front of you, there's a welcome card. We invite you to fill that out, drop it off in the offering box, and we'd love to give you a lot more information about the church right there. Well, you did it again. You did it again. Yeah, Shannon's like, yeah, I did it. Yeah, that's all right. Shannon was up here singing. That's Shannon. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you did it. And you want to know what you did? Do you want me to just dismiss you and you all go home right now? No, you want to know what you did, right? You want to know what you did? So here's what you did. Last week we told you that there was an effort to raise enough money to build a well in Kirkapadu in Côte d'Ivoire, and we were $3,000 short, and this was the village in which we want to bring a well to them. And together, you raised an additional $12,000, so we've got a total of $34,000 to build a well. Yeah, that's awesome. So, Our missionaries over in Côte d'Ivoire have just a quick word for you. And so here is Jean-Claude and Francine on the
Dear
screen.
friend, my name is Jean-Claude Masuka Maleka. I am a missionary serving in Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa.
My name is Francine Mfouk. I served also in Côte d'Ivoire as a young girls coordinator and children ministries.
Thank you so much. We would like to express our gratitude for the gift that we have received for Water Tower and for Small Sanctuary. Thank you so much for all donations. May God bless you. Dear friend.
So behind them, you heard the choir warming up there at the church where Jean-Claude is preaching today. But the good news is that with the additional money raised, they are actually going to build a small sanctuary in another village. And so the gospel is being shared, and you are making a difference not only in Côte d'Ivoire, but also right here in Orange Beach. And in fact, we've got another opportunity for you. It just came up on our radar, and I want to share that with you. Is we have a mission expansion opportunity. And so what that's about is we just found out that the property just to our west is for sale. It's another 2.2 acres, and we are going to be meeting on November 12th, all the members of this church, and we're going to be voting on whether or not we want to purchase that property so that we can expand our ministry and our footprint right here in Orange Beach. So we want you to be praying about that. I know you might have a million questions about that. I will tell you, if you have questions, please contact the church office or one of our leadership council members. We're not going to be advertising this on Facebook or any social media platforms. This is really just our church wrestling with this decision and saying, okay, God, this is an opportunity you've given us to expand our ministry here, and is this our opportunity to move forward? So would you be praying about that? And get excited about the opportunities that are before us as we move into the future here, right here on the island, because we get to impact lives right here just as much as we're impacting them over in Africa as well. And so good times, exciting times in the life of the church. Well, today we're starting a new series called Mythbusters. How many of you remember the show Mythbusters? Guys, remember this? This is Adam and Jamie. Remember the show? Anybody? Anybody remember the show? Yeah. So in the show, what they did was they would take an urban myth and they would test it to see whether it was true or false. They would either bust the myth or confirm the myth. And they did all sorts of cool things and some weird things. One of my disappointments is that they proved that the 5-second rule does not work, that it was busted. And I don't care, right? I mean, I'm still picking it up and eating it. I mean, a little antibodies, right? I mean, they bust some myths that is just kind of a bummer about that. But what we're going to be doing, by the way, did you know that they had over 800 episodes, and they used over 12 tons of explosives, and they destroyed 100 cars? Yeah. We won't be using any explosives in this series, unfortunately. But if you got a car we can destroy, we're up for it, right? I mean, we'll have some fun with that. But what we are going to do is we are going to be talking about some spiritual myths that people have and how they impact our faith and our walk with Christ. And there may be things that you learned as a child that you really never really thought about. You just kind of thought, well, yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, I've always known that. But is it really true? And how does it affect you? Now, you may be saying, well, big deal, it's just a little myth. You know, some of those things are just it's kind of like the 5-second rule. I mean, big deal about that, right? I mean, my grandmother was incredibly superstitious. Anybody have a superstitious grandparent? Anybody else? Yeah, incredibly superstitious. And so when we were eating together, if silverware fell on the floor, she would say, does anybody know? Company is coming. I didn't know that, right? But if you're eating today and you knock a silverware or spoon on the floor, that means company's coming, right? Nah, you know, thanks, Grandma, right? It's just a silly myth, right? Big deal. Unless you refuse to leave the house because you're waiting for somebody to show up, right? See, sometimes we think these myths are just silly, big deal. What's the hassle with it? But sometimes they really impact the way we live our lives. And we live our lives in our faith with Christ. And so we're going to take the next 4 weeks. We're going to be challenging some myths, and we're going to see just what God has for us in this series. So the first myth we're going to attack is this one today. The myth we're wrestling with is faith fixes everything. I mean, many of you may have heard that as a kid, right? You just have to have enough faith, right? You got to pass the test, just have more faith. You want to make the team, just have more faith. You want to get a date, just have more faith, right? So you're saying there's a chance, right? I mean, you missed that movie quote. Anyway, you just got to have more faith if you want to get the job, right? If you want your marriage to work out. If you want your kids to be okay. If you want your grandkids to be okay. You just got to have enough faith. And by the way, isn't that what Jesus said? Here's what Jesus said, right? Matthew 17, verse 21. Jesus said, basically, if you have enough faith, let's read that together in quotes, nothing will be impossible for you. Nothing will be impossible for you if you just have enough faith. Well, let's dive into that. Let's dive into what Jesus was saying there. So when Jesus said this, let me just set the scene. Jesus and the top three, Pete, Jimmy, and Johnny are up on a mountain. And they went away by themselves, and there's a story there. It's called the Mount of Transfiguration, where they're up on the mountain, and they meet with Moses and Elijah. It's a great high time. But what we forget is down in the town, you got the other 9. And the other 9 are out doing ministry because Jesus has already equipped them, already empowered them, already sent them to do different ministries. And so they're out telling people about Jesus. They're healing the sick. They're helping people. They're doing all this great work. But they run into this one guy who's got this one son who's got a huge problem. Huge problem. And when you hear about his son, you imagine he's probably having seizures and might be an epileptic. But in Jesus' day, they say that he was demon-possessed. And so Jesus is coming down out of the mountain with Pete, Jimmy, and Johnny, and they're coming down, and all of a sudden the crowd is all gathered around, and there's this big stir because here's this guy with his son who he's asked the other disciples to heal, and it ain't happening. And so we pick up the story in Matthew 17, verse 14. When they, that is Jesus, Pete, Jimmy, and Johnny, come down off the mountain, they come to this crowd. And a man, the father of this boy, approaches Jesus and kneels before him. And he says, Lord, have mercy on my son. He said, my son has seizures and is suffering greatly, and he often falls into the fire or into the water. And he goes on to say, and I brought him to your disciples, and they were useless. These other 9, they're not as good as the 3 you left. Next time, take another 3. Leave these 3, right? Because it didn't happen. And here's what Jesus does. So Jesus says this. Listen to what he says. You unbelieving, literally that word means you who lack faith. You unbelieving and perverse generation. Now, who's he talking to? We'll get to that. How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Jesus says, bring me the boy. And look what he says. Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that very moment. Now, when the crowd dies down and the other disciples finally get away with Jesus, the other disciples are curious. They're like, what just happened, right? And so they come to Jesus and they say, why couldn't we drive the demon out? Why couldn't we heal this boy? What did we do wrong? And we've done this before, and it worked. We've seen miracles happen before. What's up with this, Jesus? Here's what Jesus says. Jesus says, it's because you have so little, what? Faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, some of you you've heard this passage. When we were in Israel, Sippy Segal took us and actually showed us a mustard seed, absolutely tiny. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. And here's what Jesus says, and nothing will be impossible for you. Jesus said, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to the mountain, move from here to there, and nothing will be impossible for you. So you just got to have more faith. That's all there is. You just need more faith. If you're not getting what you want, you just need more faith. You just need to pray harder, right? You just need to read more scripture. You just need to fast a little longer. You just need to give a little more. You just need to do a little more. If you just have enough faith, you could do the impossible. I mean, is our myth confirmed? I don't know. Something just doesn't seem right about that, does it? I mean, because it sounds like Archimedes, right? Where Archimedes, the Greek philosopher, said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world, right? And oftentimes, when we begin to think about faith, that's the way we think about it, right? You wondered what this is. This is faith. Because if I've got to have something done, if I need somebody healed, if I need to pray for somebody, if somebody needs a job, if a relationship needs to be restored, if I need healing myself, I just got to have enough faith. And if I don't have enough faith, I just got to get a bigger crowbar, and I just got to dig it in deep, get the fulcrum right, and I can faith God into action. Right? Well, that doesn't sound right, does it? I mean, is faith just a tool we put in our toolbox to move the hand of God? Is the reality all you need is just a little more faith? Well, I don't know. Maybe. But maybe not. I mean, what do you tell a little girl whose grandmother went into the hospital and she prayed? And she prayed that grandma would come home and be well, and grandma doesn't come home, ever. What do you tell the single person who's about to apply for Social Security, and they've been single all their life, and they've been looking for that mate all their life, and it's just never happened? Just have more faith. What do you tell that couple who prayed for a child, and they prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed? They got their small group to pray. They got their church to pray. They got everybody to pray, and they prayed, and she got pregnant, and they just gave God thanks. They said, yes, God, you are a God who answers prayers. And then 3 months in, she miscarries. What do you tell the wife who's in the hospital room with her husband who's dying with cancer, and she is just sure? She is just sure he's coming home. I mean, they're talking summer vacations. They're talking plans with their kids. At least she is. And she just believes God's going to heal him. God's going to heal him. And he doesn't come home. I mean, he goes to his heavenly home, but he doesn't come home. Those are 4 very real scenarios that I've had to face in my ministry, and I could tell you others. But here's the crazy part. I can take you to the exact same scenarios, to the little girl that prayed for grandma to get well and come home from the hospital, and she does. I could tell you people who've been single all their lives, and they pray, and late in life, God brings another person along, and they're just married and have a wonderful relationship. I can tell you couples who prayed for a child and prayed and prayed and prayed, and God blessed them with a child, and it healthy and grew and was wonderful. I can take you to hospitals, and we can sit in the room where somebody was, and there was a person there with cancer, and the spouse prayed, and the church prayed, and the doctors worked, and God worked, and that person went home healthy and whole and fine. So does faith work or does it not work? I mean, does faith fix everything? I mean, yes and, well, no, right? Yes and no. So what is this thing called faith? So let's jump into the scripture and really begin to wrestle with this question. Does faith fix everything? Or does it not? Or do we not understand faith? So let's go back into the story. Because back in the story, we see the disciples are gathered around Jesus. And look what the disciples say. The disciples say to Jesus what? They said, why couldn't what? We drive this demon, this illness out of this child? Now notice their question. Their question is about who? It's about them. What did we do wrong? Right? Because Jesus, you sent us out to heal before. Jesus, we've done this before. Jesus, the first time was freaky. We didn't know what was going to happen, but there was a miracle, and so we just kept doing what we do all the time. We've said the right words. We prayed the right prayer. We used your name appropriately, and nothing happened this time. Jesus, what did we do wrong? What was wrong with our tool? What was wrong with our faith? You see, I don't know about you, but I've had that question, right? You've probably had that question. God, you've answered this prayer, and this is what I did last time. God, why haven't you answered that prayer this way this time? You see, and the first thing that we get is that we begin to think that faith is some kind of formula, that if we can mathematically calculate it and figure it out, then we can use it. But faith is not a tool, is it? Second thing we notice is look what Jesus said. Jesus said, you, whoever you is, you unbelieving generation, you who lack faith and are perverse, you are twisted. That word literally means twisted upside down. Jesus says to the people gathered there, you don't understand faith. You don't have faith, not real faith. And what faith you have is twisted or turned upside down. You have the wrong understanding of faith. Because, see, for so often we think that faith is a means to move God, but it's not. We think if we just have enough faith, we can force God into action. And that's the way we approach it sometimes. And we get so frustrated at God because it's like, God, why aren't you doing what I want you to do? Why aren't you doing what I'm praying about? Why aren't you meeting my needs? And we say, God, if you would just tell me the rules, tell me how faith works, and I will do it. Just tell me, I'll do it. I'll pray that prayer. I'll give that sacrifice. I'll go there. I'll even teach children, right? Or middle schoolers, right? I mean, whatever it takes, God. Just tell me. But see, faith is not a means to move God. Faith is what? Faith is a means to walk with God. Faith is not a means to move God. It's not some tool that we have that we put in our toolbox to begin to force God into action or to begin to fix things the way we want them fixed. Faith is not a tool that we use. Faith is actually a means that we have to walk with God. Over and over and over, read the scriptures. It tells us by faith, the children of Israel walked through the Red Sea onto the dry land. It was by faith that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego survived the fiery furnace. We learned that lesson in Kids Club last Wednesday. It was by faith that they went through it. It is by faith that we have our sins forgiven. It's by faith that we have access to our Heavenly Father. It's by faith that we walk with God. Look at the way Paul writes it. Paul writes this, a very familiar verse. He says, it is by grace you have been saved through or by faith. This is not of yourself, it is a gift from God. So let's just see what this faith is all about. It says, so what is this passage? It says, for it is by grace. What is grace? Grace is a gift freely given to us. It's freely given to us. What kind of gift is it? Well, it's a gift that by means we are saved, by means we are forgiven, by means we are brought into relationship with God. We've done nothing to earn it. We didn't do all the right things or say all the magic words, pray the magic prayer. By the way, there are no magic words, there are no magic prayers. Right? It is by grace you have been saved. It is a free gift from God given to us through Jesus Christ. When we receive Christ into our life, we are saved. We are brought into relationship with God. And it happens all by what? By faith, right? By faith. So what is faith? Well, we think about this. Faith is simply belief in who and what God is. Writer of Hebrews tells us this. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him, he's going to define faith for us, must believe that he exists. We must believe that God exists. He's real. And what? And he rewards those that earnestly seek him. In other words, we must believe that God is real and that God has our best intention in mind. God always wants something good for you and me. Always. That's what faith is. But there's more, right? It's not just belief in who God is and what God is. It's also trusting in God. Which means what? It means we walk together with him. Amos 3:3 says, do two walk together unless they agree to do so? So if we have faith in God, we believe in God. We believe that ultimately he's going to take us to someplace good. He's got our best intention in mind. And it's better than what we know. It's bigger than what we think. And we're going to walk with him. We're going to follow him. We're going to take those steps of obedience and trust him in all that he is leading us to do. See, that's what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego actually did, right? Some of you know the story. There was a king made a golden statue, told everybody to bow down and worship the statue, and if they didn't, they were thrown into a fiery furnace and they would die. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get right up to the king, and the king says, aren't you going to bow down and worship the statue? And they said, nope. And he says, if you don't, we're going to throw you in the fiery furnace, and you're going to die there. And here's what they said. They said, oh, king, hear us. We get it. You're the king, but you're not God. And our God, the God we trust, is the one true God. And we're going to follow him. And if you throw us into the furnace and we die, guess what? We die. It doesn't prove anything about who's God, because our God's bigger than all of this. And if we live, we live. Because, see, faith is not outcome-based in the moment. Faith is about trusting the God who created us, the God of all eternity, that he is ultimately leading us to someplace that's good for us. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown in the fire, and in that instance, they came out whole. But read the book of Hebrews, chapter 11. You read of a lot of people who had faith, and at the end of that chapter, it says, and they were torn apart by lions. They were sawn in two. They gave their life for the gospel. And they had faith. And what was their faith? They believed that not only God existed, but that God had their good in mind, and they would continually follow God and not deny him, regardless of what was happening right here and right now, regardless of the impossible situation that they were in. So then what did Jesus mean when he said this? That nothing would be impossible for you. What are you talking about, Jesus? Well, let's read it again. He says to the disciples right there, he said, why didn't this work? He said, because you don't understand faith. You have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, this is so interesting. If you've ever seen a mustard seed, it is absolutely minute. I think what Jesus is really saying is, look, you either have faith or you don't. There's not a measurement here. You either got it or you don't. You either believe in me and you're following me and you're trusting me, or you're not. He says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed and you say to this mountain, move from here to there, it will move. Now, what's interesting, in Jesus' day, that saying, move a mountain, is another way of saying you're facing an impossible task. So Jesus is saying, hey, if you're in an impossible situation, if you have enough faith, I'll get you through it. You're going to get through it. I will make a way for you to get through this impossible situation. And see, where we kind of get tripped up is we're like going, oh, good Jesus, so that means I will win the lottery. It means grandma will come home. It means my child will get the job. It means my relationship will be restored. That means grandpa will come home out of the hospital. Now, see, that's faith in an outcome instead of saying, Jesus, I'm trusting that you're going to get us through this impossible situation. That's the faith that Jesus calls us to. Because, see, faith is not a tool that we have to try to manipulate God to act in a way that we want him to act. But rather, faith is reality that says our Heavenly Father loves us so much that he wants a relationship with us and he's willing to walk with us. And whatever impossible situation you are in, he will walk with you through it. Even through that impossible situation called death. And when Jesus rose from the grave, he proved to everyone once and for all that God is big enough to make a way through the darkest impossibility that we all will face one day, and that is death itself. And that on the other side of it, God has something that is good for us. So I don't know today. I don't know where you are today. And I don't know what impossible situation you may be facing today. I don't know. You know, maybe it's something we've already talked about with a child or a family member or a friend or an illness. But the reality is today, maybe you're here and you needed to hear this message today because you need to know that God is with you and he's willing to make a way through this impossible situation. You just got to trust him and you just got to say, let go and say, okay, God, whatever you want, we'll get through it. Now are you saying that I don't need to pray, that I don't need to pray God would heal my loved one, or pray that we can conceive a child, or pray? No. Keep praying. Your Heavenly Father said, ask. Your Heavenly Father said, listen, I know your heart. I know you're hurting, and I want you to ask, and I want you to know that I want to hear your heart. And sometimes God acts in those ways, and it just comes together, and it's beautiful, and we rejoice in that. And sometimes he doesn't. And the outcome makes God no less God either way, and it makes you no less faithful either way, because our faith is in the God who says, I am with you in this, and I know your heart, and I know what you want. And I know that on this earth there are some hard, dark things. God says, I know that. My son died too. And he says, I'm going to be with you through this. Don't give up. Don't let go. Hang in there. I've got your best intention. I've got your good in mind. So if that's you today, I just want you to know that God is willing to make a way for you through that impossible situation. And maybe today you're here, and maybe something happened a long time ago in your life. I've met people all the time, and they share the story of when God let them down, when grandma didn't come home, when the child didn't survive, when cancer seemed to win. It's tough. But what I want to remind you today is that our faith in God is not based upon that outcome. And somehow we look and we say, well, God, I must have done something wrong. I must not have prayed enough, or I must not have done all the right things, or maybe I've had people come up to me and say, Jim, is God punishing me for what I did in my past? Is that why I didn't get what I prayed for? You see, that's the myth. That's the myth. Faith fixes everything. It's just not true. What is true is that faith puts us right next to our Heavenly Father, who will walk us through everything and ultimately will lead us to someplace good. And so this morning, I just want you to spend a little bit of time with God. Think about what impossible situation you might be facing, and I want to encourage you to face it with faith that God is with you. Ask. Yeah, please. Pray, read Scripture, fast, but ultimately trust your Heavenly Father. And maybe today, if there's something in your past that you've been holding on to so long, I pray today that maybe you can let go just a little bit. So let's pray together. So Heavenly Father, we come to you in this moment, and we just thank you for who you are, because God, you are faithful. Always have been, always will be. And God, we just confess that sometimes we use faith as a tool to see if we can't manipulate you just a little bit so that we can get what we really want. Instead of just trusting God that we ask and we trust you with the results. And so today, God, whatever situation is out there, impossible situation that people are trying to make it through, God, may they sense your hand, may they know your heart, and ultimately may they have faith that you are leading them somewhere. You are making a way for them. And God, for those who are carrying a burden and they've been carrying it for a long time, thinking that they did something wrong, that they're being punished for something. That's why they didn't get what they prayed for. God, help them to see the reality of this thing called faith, because it's not a tool to manipulate you. Rather, it's a means that you give us to walk with you. And so may we walk with you today, and may we find a way through the impossible. We pray this all in Christ's name, and everyone said, amen.